I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play, and wild and sweet the words repeat, of peace on earth, goodwill to men. I thought how, as the day had come, the belfries of all Christendom had rolled along the unbroken song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And in despair I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong, and it mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then pealed the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. Till, ringing, singing on its way, the world revolved from night to day. A voice, a chime, a chant sublime, of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special holiday edition of The Owner's Box After Dark. I'm your host, Mark Farinella, the former assistant sports editor, Patriots beat writer, sports columnist, and award winner from a newspaper in southeastern Massachusetts. And I just want to offer my belated holiday wishes to you all. We are recording this on December 29th, 2020, here in the palatial surroundings of Fulton Pond Studios in Mansfield, Massachusetts, where we've been holding court with podcasts since October of 2019, and we will continue on, soldiering on into the new year, which, as the poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow noted, should be happier and better, with a little bit of peace on earth and goodwill to men. I'm surprised I didn't stumble during the poem. A couple of tears rolling up in the eyes there, because let's face it, we have been through hell in this past year. We really have. Between the presidency of Donald Trump, the pandemic, which I think now is in its 44th week, the deaths of so many beloved people, whether famous or not famous. Yeah, it's been a rough year. And I just hope for all of us and for all of you, all of my listeners and viewers, that 2021 will be much happier, much more productive, safer. Nothing is guaranteed, I know. But if we all put a little heart into it, and we think of those words of peace on earth and goodwill to men, maybe we can make it happen. I think we're going to have a few people in charge of things that will be a little bit more willing to look at things in that context. So let's all make one New Year's resolution. And because I don't make New Year's resolutions, because I know I never, ever live up to them. If I had lost all the weight that I said I was going to lose in the last 20 New Year's resolutions, I'd weigh 5 pounds by now. So I don't put much stock into them. But we can at least set a goal to be a little kinder, a little gentler. Maybe we can block a few of the MAGA idiots rather than confronting them on Twitter, as I do. So I'm going to try my best in the new year to just say, screw it, I don't want to hear your message. And that's it. Boom, you're gone. I'd like to embrace my friends a little bit more, if possible. Obviously, it has to be socially distanced. I want to enjoy the things that we can enjoy. And I really hope that we can get some help to the people who really need it. Friends in the restaurant industry, right at the top of that list. People who have run out of their unemployment benefits. I pray I don't pray too often, but I'll just say I think very, very intensely about trying to direct us in a proper course of action here. If that means a few phone calls or emails to congressmen or senators, if it just means speaking out sometimes in the right manner, not just by telling some maggot to go fuck himself, which I've done on occasion, and I'm not proud of it. I think we can at least get some positive momentum moving in the right direction in 2021. Okay, a few quick things before we get into tonight's festivities. First of all, of course, the drink of choice tonight. What a festive cup this is. Yeah, it's the only one they had on the shelves. You didn't notice how many shortages there are in the supermarkets again? Wow. Anyway, this is the Starbucks cold brew, nitro cold brew, with a little bit of half and half and some Splenda in it. Absolutely delicious, and I do enjoy it very much. And, of course, the mood candle, befitting the holiday season, is, of course, the Evergreen Mist by Yankee Candle. And, wow. My house smells great right now. So, yeah, I just wanted to make a quick note of how many things seem to be missing off the shelves. And it's not just that. I mean, I expect there'll be maybe some paper towel shortages or a few things here and there that I don't expect, that didn't happen during the first wave of the pandemic. Toilet paper seems to be hanging in there, but I bought so much that I'm good until 2023, I think. But I'm just, like, for instance, I guess maybe tastes are changing in certain things. Like, 2 Stop and Shops in our immediate area here do not carry beef-flavored rice-a-roni anymore. The San Francisco treat, remember? You know, look, I like it. It's quick. You make it up quick. It's, it's something that will fill the belly in the middle of the night. No, I don't eat it in the middle of the night, but I'm just saying it's an alternative to sitting around and making up a big meal. I mean, if I just want to have something I can gnaw on over about an hour's time in front of the television set, I'll make it. Can't find it anymore. I mean, I'm finding the worst possible flavors of rice-a-roni, but it's just not in the sections anywhere. And that's not just the Stop and Shops, but the Shaws as well. I haven't been to the Big Y over in Easton in a while. Maybe I should take a run over there. Or maybe I should just order it on Amazon like everybody else is doing these days. Might as well make Jeff Bezos richer, right? And what else? It was something I noticed that was missing off the shelves. Oh, I like to use those tubs of whipped unsalted butter because it's like, for one thing, less salt, which is always good, and since it's whipped, you think you're using a lot, but you're not really, because it's not as much as like in a big kind of like one of those big things of butter. You get a bar of butter and you throw it in the thing. You get a couple spoonfuls of the whipped stuff, and it's less because it is whipped. It's got air in it, but it's good and I like it. But I can't find the Land O'Lakes brand anymore in any stores around here. In fact, I can't find any whipped unsalted butter in the Stop and Shops at all. The Shaw's supermarkets do carry Breakstone, I think is the brand. And, it's all right. It's good. I prefer the Land O'Lakes because the tub's a little bit bigger, and it's also all plastic, so when you stick a spoon into it, you're not sticking the spoon through the tub. But yeah, how many people do that, I guess? But but I just things just seem to be disappearing for choice. For a matter of choice, and I don't know why. Whether it's changing demographics around here, I don't know. But anyway, that's my shopping gripe of the holiday season. You gotta admit, I do shop a lot more online than I used to. In fact, this light over here in the corner It's kind of harsh. It's very bright. So I've ordered a kind of like a tubular light that will be directing the light back towards the wall and diffusing it outward, so they won't have that big light there. I can't move my microphone any farther over, I don't think, to get that out of the picture altogether, although I could probably do this a little bit. Okay, so it's out of the picture altogether right now, but I just want to make sure that there's fairly good lighting here. I mean, I only have one professional light in front of me. That is that you can see the rings on my from the reflection. I also have a larger kind of a fluorescent thing over here. Kind of screws up the color balance a little bit, but anyway, who cares? All right, let's get into the topics of the night here before we go any farther. We're already in 11 minutes into this. Well, Merry Christmas to all you Patriots fans. Whoop-de-doo. Maybe, just maybe, one of the worst football games ever played at Gillette Stadium by the New England Patriots. I mean, there have been a lot of bad performances within Gillette, but usually the Patriots were administering those to the team that had been coming in. I actually thought that the Buffalo Bills on Monday night had a chance to put 50 up on the Patriots, but they did not do it. And I'm trying right now to call up my well, I'll come back to it anyway. The bottom line to this game is that the Patriots have checked out. I don't think there's any other way to put it other than to say that with no playoff possibility available to them, and can you believe that in the entire history of Gillette Stadium, which opened in 2002, there has never been a game played by the Patriots that didn't have them active in the hunt for a playoff berth. Okay? 2002, they were active right till the end. When they opened the stadium that year, even when Tom Brady went out in 2008, in the opening game, Matt Castle did a really good job of managing the team, and they were eliminated despite finishing 11-5, and that's basically ridiculous. I mean, to do that well and to not make the playoffs. And remember, though, this year the playoff field was increased by a team in each conference because of, I guess, to make people happier and kind of as a reward for suffering through the pandemic and with no fans being in the stands in so many of the stadiums. But, it's just this has been a weird season for the Patriots. And when they lost by the score of 38-9 to the Buffalo Bills on Monday night, and believe me, I was fooled at the beginning. The Bills are dropping so many passes. I mean, the Patriots actually led the game early on a Nick Folk 45-yard field goal. And the Bills had many opportunities, but they kept dropping passes. And I said, well, stranger things have happened over the years. But then they outscored the Patriots 21-6 in the second quarter of play, and that basically was all she wrote. And what we saw thereafter was perhaps one of the most embarrassing performances by a Patriots team. They couldn't stop the passing game. Oh, God, Josh Allen. And, after I think, from all indications, when Bill Belichick met with the TV crew from ESPN, as he does each week before every game, he meets with a crew from the televising network. I get the feeling that he just didn't gush all over Josh Allen. So Steve Levy and all the other guys, Levy, I guess it is, and all the other guys who on that broadcast, and I don't even follow it anymore, Monday Night Football, because usually the games are so bad. But they said that he seemed not to be buying into the Josh Allen phenomenon. And, of course, Allen ends up throwing for 320 yards against the Patriots defense, 27 for 36 4 touchdowns, longest was a 50-yarder, and a passing rating of 138.7. And he was basically yanked for almost the whole fourth quarter because he didn't need to play anymore. Meanwhile, for the Patriots, another miserable performance by Cam Newton, passing 5 of 10 for 34 yards, sacked twice, 57.9 passer rating. But, I mean, seriously. Now remember, the whole week leading up to this game, there was a huge, I guess, groundswell by the media and even some fans that said that by now we've seen all we're going to see of Cam Newton. It should have been over. Start Jarrett Stidham at quarterback. And I responded to some folks on social media, calling upon my veteran experience of having covered the team for 40-plus years and for almost all of Belichick's tenure until this year, of course, that what in the world gave them any indication at all that Belichick was going to make a change? Bill Belichick does not do that. Bill Belichick has in his mind what he thinks is best for the football team, and that's what he's going to do, and nobody can convince him otherwise. So Cam Newton was going to start, and I think he's going to start this week against the New York Jets as well in the season finale. And it's because Bill doesn't listen to anybody else. I mean, it's his team, and he has the cachet to be able to say, I'm going to do it my way, and the hell with you. So Cam Newton was going to start, and he played the half, and he was awful. And yes, he did put Jarrett Stidham in for the second half, and I think we didn't see much more from Stidham to convince me, anyway, that he should be starting ahead of Newton. 4 completions in 11 attempts, 44 yards, sacked once, pressured a lot, 49.1 passer rating. Ugh. Now, the truth of the matter is, I honestly don't know what happened because I don't see practice and not there every day as I used to be. But even when I was there every day, you didn't see the important things in practice anyway. They don't let us in at times like that. Not like the old days when you could sit and watch the whole practice if you wanted to. I can tell you about so many days sitting underneath the spreading maple tree in a rotting picnic table in the end zone of the practice fields behind the former Foxborough State Hospital, the only team in the National Football League that practiced at a loony bin. And it was fitting because it was the New England Patriots. But nowadays, no, we don't get to see any of that. So the point being that what Belichick has seen in Jarrett Stidham in practice, and I know the backup quarterback doesn't get as many reps as the starter, but it obviously hasn't been enough to convince him to give this kid the opportunity to play now, because if he had, he would have played sooner. I'm convinced of that. So the question was raised on the fifth quarter, the overly long post-game show, the way overly long post-game show on Channel 38, as produced by Channel 4, WBZ TV in Boston. The question was raised, and the one that fans get to answer is the quarterback of the future for the Patriots on the roster right now, or something to that effect? And I think 22% said yes, and 78% said no, and I would agree with the 78%. I do not think that the Patriots are going to go with either Cam Newton or Jarrett Stidham, and certainly not Brian Hoyer. Although, hey, they might let him stick around anyway because he's harmless. But I think what's going to happen is that you're going to find Belichick maybe in a position where he thinks he's going to have to find a free agent who is a veteran and can maybe shepherd a younger guy, and they're not going to get any of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the draft. Well, I think there's some hope for the kid at Brigham Young who's supposed to have an arm like a cannon. Typical old-style big white kid. Probably can't run worth a damn, but he does have a cannon for an arm. But he's gonna have to sign somebody, and so the guys out there are, maybe a guy like Matthew Stafford from Detroit or Carson Wentz from Philadelphia is very disgruntled, and maybe they can pry him loose. Some of the other names that were mentioned, the kid that they just cut in Washington. No, don't get a guy who's just 2 years in the league and can't walk and chew gum at the same time. Maybe Mitchell Trubisky from Chicago. One way or the other, I don't think any of these really tickle my my loins. Because, look, we had Tom Brady here for 20 years. And whether you love him or you hate him, or you're just in between, you see things that you should love him for, but there are other things that you kind of get tired of after all these years. That's kind of my category here. Certainly, maybe the greatest quarterback ever to play the game. No question that he deserves consideration in that. And, yeah, he was, certainly pretty boy and lived the life and all that. Not the humble, skinny kid that walked in here in 2000 and actually knew who a former Attleboro High School athlete, Leland Anderson, played basketball and was recruited by Michigan. Brady actually knew who he was, which shocked me. Now, I'm sure he wouldn't even remember the question that I asked then. But the fact is, he's gotten his team into the playoffs in Tampa. Gronkowski has had a fairly good season after coming out of retirement to play one last hurrah with Tom. Well, it may not be the last hurrah. And I wouldn't be surprised if Julian Edelman finds his way to Tampa next year. Probably has about 30 catches before he blows his knee out again. I think. Look, I loved what Julian Edelman did here all those years. Loved it, but he's done. I think he's done. So, but he'll find a way to get something out of that. But it's you're not going to get that again. You're not going to get lucky like you did that time, unless the late Dick Rabine is pointing at a prospect from heaven and saying, "Draft this guy. I know what he's got." So, and my bigger question here, and this is the one I really think that has to be asked at this point. I won't get into the was it Belichick or was it Brady debate, because I think we can all point to certain things. I know some guys in the media and some former writers like myself are big into the fact that Bill Belichick was 1-0 without Tom Brady. My feeling is that I have to look ahead to the future. And this does not look like it's going to be a short rebuild. There's a lot of things that have to be fixed with the Patriots. It's not just quarterback. It's the offensive line. There's going to be some gaps there coming up next year. It's got to be tight end. It's got to be wide receiver. There has to be some huge improvements in those departments. Defensive line needs help. Linebacking core. Holy mackerel. I know they're getting Dante Hightower back next year, but linebacking core really needs help. And see, I'm sad about this. I don't think that Bill Belichick is going to stick with Chase Winovich. I like Winovich's potential, but I think he's too gregarious, he's too open, he's too out there for Belichick's liking, and I think that he'll find a way to get something for him instead of keeping him around. That's just my feeling. But my thought is, all right, is Bill Belichick the guy you want doing a long-term rebuild of 3 to 4 years? He's almost 70 years old. And look, I'm almost 70 years old. I'm not as old as Bill, but I'm getting there. And, I don't like that premise that, just because you're old, you can't do something. But let's face it, he is in much more intense pressure to succeed, and he will be now if the Patriots start to fall off the map after 20 years of incredible success. Now, I do have the feeling that he's hanging around as a means of grooming his son, Steve, to be his successor. Now, the question is, will that happen? A few years down the road, I don't know if Robert Kraft is going to be making the decisions as the owner, whether he's not with us anymore or whether he just steps aside completely. It's all going to be on Jonathan Kraft's shoulders. And I think he'll be the one to make the decision, and maybe Bill Belichick can bully him into that, but I have a feeling that if the Patriots go south for a while and don't, are hovering more around 500 or below it, as they will be this year, can Jonathan Kraft afford to let Belichick hang around for those 3 or 4 years of decline? Part of the reason why Patriot Place succeeds is because it's based on the Patriots' success, okay? Because they're successful, that's why people come to shop in the crappy stores and eat at the crappy restaurants. Well, there are a couple of good ones, but that's the whole premise behind it. The Patriots go south, and if the attendance starts to falter in the stadium, I would imagine business will suffer as well. And my thought about that may not be a popular thought, but they had to have taken a financial hit this year with no fans in the stands at all. Now, the team's worth about $5 billion, so I think Robert Kraft can afford it. But you look a few years down the road, and if revenues start to drop a little bit from the operations that they own, they're always going to get plenty of money from the NFL because the NFL is the only working example of communism in the entire world. All of the income of the NFL goes into a pot, and it's shared equally, especially on the TV contracts. So as a result, each team is going to get a nice nut, even if they suck. But the fact is, there are other things that the Krafts are invested in around here, and of course, those are the hotels and the stores and the development around, and maybe they have some plans for a few other things. I remember they wanted to develop across the street into more of a medical plaza, but I think those plans got shelved when Brigham and Women's and Mass General and the Dana-Farber Cancer Center decided to build more in their current location there at Patriot Place. But no matter what the case may be, if revenues start to fall, what would stop Jonathan Kraft from just deciding, I'm getting out while the getting's good? Sell the team. Sell the team when he can get tons of money for it, at least in the billions. They paid $168 million for the franchise and still complain to this day that they overpaid for it. But now this thing's going to be worth $3 to $5 billion in a sale. Even if they're starting to slip a little bit, it's still a major market team. So who's to say that Jonathan Kraft might say, I don't want the aggravation. I'll get out while the getting is good, and I'll sell it to somebody else who wants to make some money for a while. Maybe an ownership group involving former President Donald J. Trump. He was interested before, and he wants desperately to get into the NFL, and I bet you he still will, even when he's owning his right-wing conservative television network somewhere. I think he's going to still want to get into the NFL because he hates being told no, and that's what happened to him. So, hey, the Patriots, Kraft family, buddies with our former president-to-be. I don't know if any of this is going to happen. I just wonder, though, whether Belichick's the guy that they should put their complete faith in for a long-term recovery. Let's see how he does in this offseason. Let's see what steps he takes. Let's see who leaves. Will Nick Caserio leave? Will there be more assistant coaches? Will Josh McDaniels finally take a head coaching job somewhere else, knowing that he's not the heir apparent here anymore? They have to rebuild the scouting department and the coaching staff as well. That's a huge nut for a guy who's maybe dyeing his hair a little bit to avoid letting people know how old he really is. One more game. New York Jets at home. Sunday at 1. You're going to see a lot of Sunday at 1s next year, too. So, well, I don't mind telling you how many years I spent on that beat wishing, as happy as I was to go to Super Bowls and enjoyed, and as much as I enjoyed that ride, I can't tell you how many times I wished I could have gotten my Januaries back and just enjoyed high school basketball at that time, because the seasons so often went so deep and I was exhausted, and there was so little of the high school basketball schedule left by the time it was over. So, but, look, obviously, Super Bowls, that was great. Great run. I enjoyed every minute of it. But I would have liked the feeling of being able to leave that game on Sunday and then go to the postmortem on Monday and then just say, that's it for this year. See you in March. Oh, my. Okay, folks, we'll be back. I've got a treat for you for a commercial tonight. You don't have to know Japanese. We're going to step back in time a little bit. It's going to be a little longer than your average commercial, so sit back and enjoy it, and we'll chat a little bit about it after it's over.
Now see all that's new for the USA. See and drive the Super Sports by Chevrolet.
Chevrolet offers 4 different kinds of super sport fun. Here's a Corvair Monza convertible with the extra cost Spider option. Just right for the sports car fan who's a family man. With 150 horsepower turbo supercharged rear engine, snappy Spider nameplates, and special instrumentation. The Spider options available on the Corvair Monza convertible and Monza Club Coupe.
Now see all that's new for the USA.
Here's a Chevy 2 Nova Super Sport. Individually adjustable front bucket seats are included in its extra cost, extra fun equipment. Available on Nova convertibles and sport coupes. The Chevy 2 Super Sport option also features an electric clock and gauges and all vinyl leather grain upholstery.
Now see all that's new for the USA.
Here's the Jet Smooth Chevrolet with the extra cost, extra glamour Super Sport option. The central console has a convenient locking compartment. And Impala Super Sports, convertibles, and sport coupes can also have at extra cost this new adjustable comfort tilt steering wheel. And the engine can be Chevrolet's optional TurboFire 409 with 340 horsepower. The all-new Corvette Stingray, completely redesigned for '63 and available for the first time in 2 models, coupe and convertible. Corvette Stingray by Chevrolet, America's only true sports car.
Now see all that's new at your Chevrolet dealers today. See and drive the Super Sports by Chevrolet.
Welcome back to the Owner's Box after dark. Happy holidays to all of you. I'm Mark Farinella, not Santa Claus. And I just thought you'd enjoy that little trip back into really memory lane. Now, I imagine some of you folks who watch these podcasts are too young to actually have been alive when that commercial was made. I imagine it was probably made somewhere maybe after August, around September of 1962, because that's about the time the 1963 Chevrolets came out. And that was kind of impressive to see what everybody would get excited about for cars at that time. You know what? I wouldn't mind having one of those Impalas. Especially, well, I guess they became the big thing out in California, though. They, the ones that go up and down, bounce around like that, lowriders, and I'm too old for that. My hemorrhoids would never go for that. But that was the first year of the Corvette Stingray, 1963. In fact, my favorite television show was Route 66 on CBS. Martin Milner and by that time, Glenn Corbett, as the two guys driving across the nation in their brand new Corvette that they would get every year, because Chevrolet was the sponsor of the show, and it would provide a new Corvette several new Corvettes to the production crew as they were out in the road somewhere in America. So when the styles changed from the 62 Corvette, which was actually a very good-looking Corvette, and I wouldn't mind owning one of those, to the 63, the Stingray with the flip-open headlights, it was noticeable. I mean, continuity-wise, you'd go from one episode where they're still driving around in the headlighted Corvette, and then all of a sudden, I think they flipped to an episode that was filmed in St. Louis, and sitting in the street is a Stingray, which allegedly belonged to Todd and Link. And I'm like, wait a minute, guys, wrong car at that point. Actually, I think George Maharis might have actually still been on the show as Buzz Murdoch when they made that flip, and then he disappeared for a while, and then he left the show and so on. But anyway, I've always loved the 63 Stingray. I think that is one of the most beautiful cars ever made in the United States of America. And you look at that car today, and with all the changes, sure, it's not like the current mid-engine Corvette that looks like a Ferrari or something like that, and you can't drive it on the Southeast Expressway. But if you want to go out and get a sporty car that really just sort of made you feel young again, God, I'd love to have a 63 Stingray. I know I'd get criticized by people about, compensating for something that worked better when I was younger, or like trying to, it's like act like I'm 50 years younger than I am, and so on and so forth. I know. Look, I've got a Beetle convertible. I enjoy that. I'm not going to go out and spend $100,000 on some exotic car just because I might live for only 15 more years. You don't want to think that. But anyway, so I thought you'd enjoy that commercial. I thought it just was just a nice little blast from the past that I found on the internet, and it shows you everything. How'd you like to have a Corvair? Flip over any old time. Unsafe at Any Speed by Ralph Nader. Yep. Okay. Couple of recollections in the holiday vein that I want to give you right now that will wrap up tonight's episode of The Owner's Box After Dark. First thing was 10 years ago this week, and I'd forgotten about this until I saw, how Facebook pops up memories every now and then. It shows you posts that you made on a certain day from many years ago. Well, I've been a member of Facebook for about 12 or 13 years, so I get some from pretty far back. And from 10 years ago, I forgot about my Christmas Odyssey that included a game between the Patriots and the Buffalo Bills. At that time, I think it was called Ralph Wilson Stadium at that time. I know they've gone through several different names for that stadium in Buffalo, in Orchard Park, New York, and I don't know how many of you know this, but that stadium, the one that was built in the early 1970s, is an adaptation of the original plan for Schaefer Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts, the original Route 1 stadium. Take a look at it. See the way it's got 3 levels of seats that aren't built out over each other, that just goes right straight up. Now, there have been a lot of modifications, a lot of renovations to what's now, I guess, Bill's Stadium over the years, but the original blueprint was adapted from Schaefer Stadium because it was quick and easy, and they were looking to put up something quick and easy to replace the old War Memorial Stadium in downtown Buffalo, where The Natural was filmed, by the way. But so anyway, I got myself off the track here a little bit. And it has to do with the Patriots were playing the Bills over Christmas, the Christmas week, 10 years ago. And I was on the road at the time. I traveled to cover road games, so I took a flight on, first time I ever flew Southwest Airlines. And I know a lot of people absolutely swear happily in regard to Southwest. I swear at it. And the reason is because even though it got me to Buffalo from where did I think I left from Providence on that one. No. Actually, I did leave from Boston. That was back when they actually started flights, and it hadn't been that long that Southwest started serving Logan Airport. And so I flew easily enough to Buffalo on Southwest, stayed in a different hotel than I normally had. It was normally I stay at the Amherst Marriott, which is probably the biggest hotel near whatever the stadium's called. And but because of the holidays, that hotel was almost booked solid. But I stayed in the courtyard, just a few blocks down the street, and within still easy access to. But still, it's about a half-hour drive from that little area to Orchard Park. But I thought I got this room at the courtyard, and it was kind of big and it was nice, but it was an older courtyard. So instead of having those, sometimes they have chimneys and fireplaces, and usually most of the newer ones, they're gas fired, and you just turn a knob, and the gas flames make you look like you're having a nice little fire, and it's nice and warm, and you can sit there and drink a hot toddy and whatever. But this particular time, this was a real chimney, and had a flue, which I didn't know, and they gave you these fake logs, the fireplace logs that you buy at your supermarkets. So I remember going to light the thing, followed all the instructions. I figured the flue was open because I could feel some air coming down. Within 10 minutes, all of the alarms were going off. The room was filled with smoke, and the fire department was on its way. Well, turns out that the flue wasn't entirely open, and there was a lot of snow and ice buildup in it. So I probably shouldn't have used it anyway, but they didn't tell me that. So the fire basically went out by itself anyway without need for the fire department. They set up a fan or two to kind of get the air out, but it didn't get the smoke out of my shirt and clothes and everything else. So I had to actually get a different room, one without a fireplace at that point. And so I went to the game the next day, and I think the Patriots won, as they usually did in those days. But the strangest thing about that was then all of a sudden it started to snow like crazy. And I had a feeling that this was going to be a very bad travel day. So I was monitoring that night. It was an afternoon game, so by the time I got home and got my evening buffalo wings, I get back to the hotel, and I'm calling the airlines to find out what's going on. And early they started canceling flights. But the funny thing about this storm is that it was coming in from Buffalo, but it hit the coastline and went up, and it dumped a ton of snow on Boston. Awful. And to the point where I was able to move around a little bit, but Boston was completely socked in. I think they got something like 25, 26 inches of snow. So as a result, it wasn't necessarily that the snow that we had falling was going to cancel flights. It was the fact that I was going to Boston that made it ridiculous. So basically, by the next morning, knowing that my flight had been canceled, I called back to find out what alternative plans I could make. And of course, I had to plan for another night at this hotel. And they were telling me that I wouldn't be able to get back till Thursday of the week. Now, so we're looking at Monday right now, and they're saying that I could not get to Boston until Thursday. And I'm like, what? That's ridiculous. Well, let me, take the ticket and apply that price to some other airline. Oh, we don't do that, sir. No, Southwest does not honor other airlines' tickets, and nor do they apply their money to anybody else's airline. So they did offer a refund, which I took immediately. Canceled any plans of going out on them, and then I started a very hurried search for the possibility of air flight somewhere else, to go someplace. Well, here's what I came up with. I had to stay Monday night as well, but on Tuesday, I could go to the Buffalo airport in the afternoon, sometime in mid-afternoon, fly to Dulles Airport on United Airlines, and that would get me, it was U.S. Air to get down to Dulles Airport in Washington, then change to United Airlines and fly to Hartford, from which I have to find a way to get to Boston, to get my car and get home. And by that time, most of the streets were plowed out, but I guess Logan was still a mess. Things were so backed up that they couldn't get flights in and out in a reasonable amount of time, so nothing was really flying in yet. A few flights were coming out or landing. But so I called my friend Alex Salaki, and I said, can you pick me up in Hartford and bring me home? And then I'll find a way to get to Boston and get my car. He says, well, I'll bring you to Logan. We can get there. You can just, get the car out of there. You should be able to get home. Okay, fine. That would work. Here's the itinerary. Later in the day, he calls me. He's got stomach flu. Can't make it. Can't get out of the house, or else he'll be stopping every 5 miles to void himself. Okay. I'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. Thank you for the offer. Everything will be fine. So what I did was I booked a rental car that I would pick up at Bradley Airport and just drive it to Boston and leave it there. All of this was going to be on the company's dole. This wasn't coming out of my pocket. So if it cost 10 times more than it normally did, T.S. Eliot. I'm not to be blamed for what God is doing weather-wise. Okay? So, flights go well. Down to Dulles. Dulles is a favorite stop of mine because I actually used to date someone who lived right near there, and every other week I was flying down there for a stretch when it was only $80 from Boston to Dulles. Those were the heady days, so to speak. But flight from Dulles to Bradley, equally fine, perfect, no problem. That was the United Airlines leg up there. Now, of course, I was able to pick up the car just before their rental car office there at Bradley Airport closed. I thought I was getting a small car, but I got this big old Monte Carlo. It's the only thing they had, really. By that time, I said, fine, I'll take it. And, arranged that I would be dropping it off at Logan. So it's close to midnight. I'm a little tired because it's a full day, and I could not sleep because, I slept on on a flight, but, I had to spend most of the day in airports. So I get in the car, and I just point it in the direction of home. And I'm driving kind of leisurely, kind of every now and then zoning out a little bit because of the long drive and the late hours. But all of a sudden, somewhere just before the Massachusetts-Connecticut state line, I noticed a light on the dashboard, and it was the low air light. One of the tire pressure gauges was going haywire. Oh, crap. I thought, I'm going to be out in the middle of nowhere on a night that's about 3 degrees out, and I'm going to have a flat tire and die somewhere in Connecticut. So I drove it waiting for the thump, 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 thump feel, but it never came. I get into Massachusetts. Everything's fine. I stop at the first gas station I could find, and I think the first. You know what? That's right. The first gas services was closed because of snow. They had still a ton of snow out there. So I managed to get all the way to Natick, but as it turns out, there was no problem with any of the tires. And I guess just was a matter of the cold, and the car had sat for a long time outside, and the sensors just didn't register, or maybe driving the car and warming it up a little bit got the air going fine. But when I tried to fill all the tires, they just, ding, and that was it. So I finally got to Logan, and I get to the old rent-a-car area, which was that was hard to find back in the old days. They've redone the whole thing now, but taking a few side roads after you get out of the tunnels and all that kind of stuff, and then you finally could find it. So of course it was closed. So all I could do is drop my keys and my rental agreement, or at least part of it, into one of the slots. And I said, that's it. Screw it. And since none of the shuttles were running at that point, because there's snow everywhere and hardly anything's moving, I grabbed my rolling suitcase and I ran as best as I could 10 years ago into the garage, and then finally got into the international terminal, because that was the first one I could get into. And then I managed to find wherever I forgot where Southwest was, but I got to it and then went back out into the garage from there, because it was just easier to do it that way. Got into my first Jetta, my silver one, which I really was a great car. And along the way, I'm leaping over people who were sleeping in the aisles and everything because they were stuck in the airport, basically. But I just kept on going, got to my car, and drove home and collapsed in my bed and didn't move for a day, basically. So that was the odyssey of 10 years ago. Okay, one last one before we close out tonight's episode. 6 years ago, December 29th, I had a headache, and it didn't go away. And the next morning, a couple of days earlier from all this, actually, and the next morning I woke up and I looked at my computer and I couldn't see half the screen. That was interesting. But I went to the Patriots game that day anyway. And again, it was against the Bills. It was a home game against the Bills. But I'm bumping into people all over the place because I'm thinking, well, is it just my usual clumsiness, or I basically wasn't seeing them out of my right eye. So I figured I'd go to sleep that night. I got everything done. I wrote the stories, and I said, you know what, we'll figure it out tomorrow. That next morning, I wake up, and again, I get up. I can't see half the computer at all. I mean, I'm like, left side was fine, right side, nothing. So I call someone I was seeing, not really seeing, but, a very close friend, female friend that I've known for decades. And I said, look, I'm having a little bit of a problem. What do you think I should do? Go to the hospital now. Well, of course, I drove myself to Patriot Place and the urgent care facility run by Brigham and Women's Hospital. And they took one look at me and said, we're taking you to Boston. You're having a stroke, sir. Okay. So they did. They got an ambulance. They brought me up to Brigham and Women's, and since it was the Christmas season, it was a madhouse there. There were all sorts of people, shooting victims, stuff like that. So there were so many people in the emergency area, they basically just had to put me on a gurney and in the hallway for a while. They monitored me closely, but they just couldn't get me into any kind of a treatment area for the longest time until, once they realized I wasn't showing too many signs of impairment at that point, but I was scared to death. And at that point, my friends, Alex and Holly, made it to Boston because I had texted them to let them, actually, as best I could because I still couldn't see out of one eye. And they spent pretty much the rest of that entire evening with me. And they finally got me into a room and started treatment. And I'll tell you, what incredible treatment I got. These people are trained to help you. Now you pay for that, but my insurance company paid for it. But still, I mean, you know why? That when you go to a place like that, you realize that there are levels of care that you get in this country, and your random local hospital is probably about down here, and they're about up here, maybe up there. So, and I don't want to tell you, one of my neurologists was just a smoking hot woman. I mean, I think she was South American. Oh, my God. Now, for all I know, they may have just trucked her in to make me feel better, because she came in, I just melted like, you're gorgeous. But they were all, the care, the level of just awareness of my needs. And, and even then, here's a case. I had one situation where they put me in a room, and then they moved another guy into the other bed in the room, and this guy was screaming and hollering and whining and crying the whole night about whatever, broken thumbnail or something, I don't know. And I called for my nurse, and I just said, look, I'm having a stroke here. I can't sleep. This guy is driving me nuts. I mean, can you do something? I mean, next thing I know, they are bringing me 2 floors up into a beautiful, giant room all to myself. I didn't want to be treated that well, I guess, for what I had. But you know what? They also probably liked me because I didn't complain at any time about anything. I learned that a long time ago from my folks. When you are being treated by people in a hospital, look, they've had to deal with all sorts of crap that day. If I don't have a limb missing, I have nothing to complain about. I will be as polite and respectful and helpful to them as they are being to me. So I think they kind of like that. But boy, I tell you, they got me into that room, and they spent the next, I think I spent 6 days in total, and lost about 45 pounds during that period of time. Wish I had still kept that off. But they got me started on a regimens of drugs that I'm still on to this day, which they realized that I needed. I had ignored my diabetic situation. I had ignored my blood pressure. And yet, as it turns out, the stroke really was not caused by any of that, believe it or not. I just had a rogue blood vessel somewhere up there that decided to pop. It was probably close to the skull, and it just decided it was going to pop. I've had so many scans, and each time the doctors say, we don't really know what caused this. You had a minor bleed, basically, but because it was on this side, it caused the problems on that side. But as time passed, most of the impairment of any sort disappeared. My eyesight is pretty good. I mean, I do have maybe a kind of a blacked out area somewhere in the lower peripheral area, but you know what? I can see as well as I did before. And because of the fact that they discovered these other things, they got me to be a lot healthier. And now if I could just, be a little bit more serious about my weight and a couple other things, I would be in a lot better shape. And would also be having less problems with the knee, although I think the knee is getting stronger. I think it is. So anyway, 10 years ago, the Buffalo Odyssey. 6 years ago, one of the most scary moments in my life. My thanks, of course, beyond all else, not just to the folks at Brigham and Women's, but I also thank Robert Kraft and the Kraft family for convincing Brigham and Women's and Mass General to initially build the health center down at Patriot Place. Without that place, I might have been seriously screwed. And I will never say a bad word, at least in that regard, about the Kraft family because of it. But in the area about the football team, I can still be critical. But no, thank you for them. And also, of course, thank you to my friends Alex and Holly for being with me as I feared mortality. And with that, I think we will eagerly await the new year. I've had Had some fun chatting with you tonight. I've had fun chatting with you for the whole year, even throughout this pandemic. So just another reminder, folks, as always, it comes at this time of year, use your hand sanitizer. There's plenty of it on the shelves, and there's more of that good stuff as opposed to the knockoff stuff that scares the heck out of me because I think it takes varnish off. Wear your masks. Definitely go out with a mask. Joe Biden's going to make us wear them anyway, but hey, we do pretty well around here. I'm proud of us. We do well. And above all else, as I said earlier, be kind to one another. Have a better year this year. Work to make it better. And we'll get a little help here and there from our friends at Moderna and Pfizer and some of the other companies that are cranking this stuff out. And most of all, just stay safe, stay healthy. And for the last time in 2020, good night, everybody.